The good news, the gospel, is just as good of news, and sometimes even better, experienced with a cold beverage and friends.
Yeah.
Okay?
You're right.
So don't think that God somehow looks down on your efforts of discipleship if they're not done in the church building or somehow formally with giant thick Bibles out on your lap and, lots of note taking. Okay?
Yeah.
Your old school board members may not believe that, but God does not look down on you. They might, but God does not. Jesus went into all the places and participated in the customs that his people did and loved and frequented, and you can too. It's okay.
Yeah.
It really is. In fact,
great,
I think
right?
I'm going to say it's the better way. Discipleship and leadership development should be normal and reproducible. Classes are great, but if you want people to know how to talk about and live out and apply the gospel in normal everyday life, try and do more of your discipleship and training and development stuff in normal settings that are familiar and reproducible and cost-effective and fun, because that's where they're going to have to live it out.
Welcome to the Everyday Disciple podcast, where you'll learn how to live with greater intentionality and an integrated faith that naturally fits into every area of life. In other words, discipleship as a lifestyle. This is the stuff your parents, pastors, and seminary professors probably forgot to tell you. And now, here's your host, Caesar Kalinowski.
All right, here we go. Hope you're doing well today. I'm rocking and rolling, feeling great. I'm going to kind of dive straight in to the topic at hand today, and here's why. I'm kind of flipping the script a bit. I'm going to be talking about something called cigars and theology. Now, don't run off if you go, I don't like cigars or whatever. Hold on a second. We do discipleship and leadership development in community. That's our best way to do it. I don't want it all to be classrooms and all that. We like it to happen in everyday life. And one of the things that we have done here, Heath and I together with a whole bunch of guys, is something we call Cigars and Theology. That's what we're going to talk about on this episode. And you're going to hear why it is such a powerful way to do disciple making. It really is. Now, it's an alternative way. I get it. And in fact, the principles we share here would work with no cigars, and it could happen for women tours or whatever. But here's a real cool thing. I want to tell you, we're going to be doing a Cigars and Theology live at my home coming up here in just a couple months. And I would like to invite you to that. Now you go, I don't know. Why would I? I don't know. Listen to this conversation with Heath and I. We're going to unpack everything about how we do this Cigars and Theology. And you're going to go like, man, that sounds so fun. I'd love to do that, kind of get a firsthand experience and maybe kick off something like that here in my own world. So I want to invite you right now up front. There's only going to be 30 slots because I'm doing it at my home, on my deck, my fireplace, all this, okay? I want to invite you right now before you listen to this even. So I'm just going to tell you about it. You can go to everydaydisciple.com/theology to find out more. But go ahead and take a listen here to Heath and I as we discuss this thing that we really love doing together. Then I'll wrap up with the big three.
Stick with us, even if you're like, this doesn't sound super interesting to me, or
No, people are going to love this.
Yeah, people are going to love it.
Because this is really about discipleship and like the gospel touching down in your neighborhood. So, yeah.
Hey, before we jump in, we want to give a shout out to a review written by Maui Warrior, who I'm assuming is a warrior from Hawaii, who says, a friend of mine shared this with me for the first time before he even had the chance to listen. Wow, that's nice. And
to that episode, I guess.
Yeah, I'm assuming, yeah. But he's found a great value with your insights. Thanks again for sharing, and I'm going to subscribe and share myself. God's blessings upon you, my brothers in Christ. So thanks for sharing.
You know what I love about that is this guy's friend hadn't even heard the new episode, saw the title and said, my buddy's going to need this, And that's how the podcast grows. And, this is free of charge. And so, how we get repaid is that we know it's going out there further. So it takes something. It costs something. It costs you time to do what this guy's buddy just did with him. And that's share it. Like share it on your Facebook page when you see it. Or tell somebody, when you grab some amazing wisdom from Heath or myself, and you tell somebody about it, say, I got that from the Everyday Disciple podcast. So have you ever checked it out?
Yeah.
Let the word go out. If you're finding benefit, there's a really good chance other people will too. And that'll bless us.
And again, our website is everydaydisciple.com. And you can go to the episodes and look through them all. If you find one that like, man, this one might fit perfectly with so-and-so, you can go ahead and just email them the link to that specific episode.
Zip. Yep.
And it might bless somebody, catch them off guard, which would be really fun. But
yep. So
all right,
anyway, thanks for those reviews. Keep them coming. Go over to subscribe over there on the old iTunes or Rooney and give us some stars and give us reviews. And we love hearing from you.
Absolutely. So, Caesar, one of the, as we move into the episode, one of the things that I love most in all of my life is just these Friday, Saturday night hangs we do occasionally. And it's always once a month called Cigar and Theology. They're hangouts, and we've got a good group of guys that come in and have joined that community. And I know you had a similar group like this back in New York that kind of helps catalyze the start of that here. Would you mind sharing kind of about that New York community?
Yeah, we used to do something, before I moved to New York, we used to do something called Brothers of the Leaf. And we would sort of do the same thing. We get together and smoke a pipe or cigar and talk about God and theology.
I love that, yeah.
But then, we do live in Washington State here, and the people are like, these guys are all token up, and so like, no, we're not,
Sure.
So when I was in New York, though, some pals were doing this thing called Cigar and Theology. It's like, oh, it's just like Brothers of the Leaf, but that makes more sense,
Yeah.
And it wasn't bait and switchy, like it was going to be cigars, and we're going to talk about theology. And there's food connected to it and all. And to be honest with you, like, let's just say right up front, not everybody who comes smokes cigars, do they?
No.
It's not about that. Like, it's the bar to entry. Like, take it, puff. It's like, no.
You
It's
don't
not
have
that
to
at
do
all.
that.
Right. And some of the guys will have, a glass of scotch or a beer or wine. And some guys like myself, just having a soda water, or whatever. But it's not even about that. But we call it Cigar and Theology because that just, I don't know, it was fun and cheeky, and a lot of guys do like cigars. But we were doing that in New York, and I fell in love with it there because of the diversity of thought and people coming, and people are believers, not barely believers, sort of were, but not sure anymore. And they found a really safe place to kind of have a meal, find some dudes that were kind of roughly in the same age and stage of life.
Sure.
Whereas but our C&T, our Cigar and Theology is pretty young and old.
Yeah.
It's kind of all over the map. But, and then when we steered it well, in other words, when we kept it to not just an opinion fest, but we actually kept it to, hey, we're going to have fun, and we're going to be respectful and cool. And it really is fun. I mean, it's pretty relaxed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cigars and, drinks and all. But we're actually going to stay on topic, and we're going to try to have some value come out of that. Then it was real valuable.
Sure.
And that's what kept people coming back, the community and the fact that there was some tangible learning and applying going on. And so that's what we've kind of mirrored here.
Yep. I love hearing guys go like, man, this is my highlight of my month. I walk away with insights for this that affect all of life. Yeah, we should have written them down.
Yeah.
We can start now.
Yeah.
So maybe we get into some of the internal logistics that we go into to make sure that people feel welcome.
Show up, know where it is.
Yeah, inform them well. And then what this can also do is show like the people listening to this show that there actually does need to be a good amount of intention to starting a group kind of similar to this. Like anytime you want to grow a community, you don't just throw everything in a pot and hope it works. There's intention.
And it's not one-off either, right? It's a rhythm. We do it every month.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not saying we never missed, but it usually just gets moved around if we have to, right? But we don't really miss. So it's a rhythm. It's predictable pattern. That's key. And you've done an amazing job of making sure it's on Facebook, and you update the pictures. They're funny and stuff like that. Or here's a deal on some cigars you can get online, or, and just touching base and reminding people. And it's in many ways, that Facebook group's kind of become a touchstone and point of conversation for us guys.
Absolutely.
Because it really is a life-on-life discipleship thing going on.
Yeah.
And so, people sharing verses, or I'm reading this book, or let's get started reading this book together, who's in. And it's definitely grown and taken on a much bigger life of its own, which was hoped for and has happened, right? But you're right. There's some other logistics, like to make people feel, welcome. Like, like our house is lit up. It's easy to find. It's not like, oh, is it here tonight? Oh, why is it pitch black? Oh, we're around back. I didn't even think of it. Nope. People know
this is where it's at.
The house is unlocked. Come on in. Everybody knows that. I think sometimes we've just put a sign up. Come on in.
Yeah, just walk in.
Click the door shut when you come in. We usually have food. My wife usually makes up a, big old bowl of soup or pot of soup or chili or pastas or something, and bread. And some of that's just because, you'd be a good host.
Sure.
Some of it else is just like, well, some of the guys are going to be drinking, and I don't want people, like no one's really over drinking, I don't think, but I hope not. But we also going to make sure they're eating and plenty of water.
Yeah.
Just be careful, right? You can have fun with it. And I know right away some people are thinking like, oh, it's just, in our tradition or denomination, whatever, we can't smoke and we can't drink at all. I'm out of here. I want to say you get to vote your conscience on this. Okay. We've done other episodes, and we will do other episodes having to do with abstinence or alcohol or all that stuff. Heath and I both feel the freedom
Yep.
to non-abuse these things
Absolutely.
and to participate and actually use them for the sake of the kingdom and expansion of the gospel and discipleship. So, but if
Completely.
you don't, there is no condemnation in Christ, really.
Yeah.
So not here, to talk about that this episode, but we make people feel welcome, but we also care for them.
Sure.
Eat some food, drink a lot of water and all that. And then we also are not afraid to say, because we're treating people like family, hey guys, can we help clean up?
Yeah.
Last
Dump the
week,
ashes.
last week I had to split so quick
Huh.
to get to the airport, and you took me. And so the guys were still kind of having to clean up and all that. And Tina was just walked in as we were walking out. And I came home, it was like perfectly, like it never had happened.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all put away. It was perfect. You know what I
It's
mean?
great.
And and it's not like they had to, but see, the good brothers do that, right? Good
Yeah.
family members do. So there is a little bit of like, okay, when is it? What time is it? It's online. Who needs a ride?
Here's the address.
We're letting you
Yeah.
know if there's food, or like, hey, there's not. Why don't you guys all bring some food tonight?
Yeah.
And then just from a logistics of the cigars and the rest of it, people usually bring their own smokes if they want them.
Yeah.
But then there's a couple of the guys that are so generous with that.
I
Like,
love that, man.
they just bring like a humidor full and they like lay them out on the counter and like, anybody take as many as you want. In fact, I'm just leaving these, take them. And
Yeah, there's a serving aspect. Like Bruce is great at that. He'll go like, "Oh, what you drinking? Okay, this cigar's gonna go great with this." And people
I
that
brought
part
this,
of,
try this, taste this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, and what I love too is there's always somebody every month that shows up with a bottle of something that we've probably never had that is super high shelf. That's just a really cool. There's this growing generosity of like, hey,
There
we're
is a growing
community.
generosity. And isn't that a picture of the kingdom in itself? And
Yeah.
I got to tell you, for either people that are new to the faith
Mhm.
or checking out the faith community, or maybe have been part of the faith, but in a church community that's very, very formal, they've never
Yep.
seen discipleship or leadership development done like outside of a building in a classroom situation. The fact that there's generosity and sure, take this, keep it,
Sure.
yeah. Someone else just
beautiful.
brought me over like, this is for your humidor. This will keep it wetter and it's easier and just put a couple drops in it. It's
Yeah.
like we're just caring for each other. And
Yeah.
and that's really the point. Wink, wink, hidden. Like we're discussing theology and we're going to
Yeah.
talk about how we do that here in a minute. But wouldn't the goal and the hope be that we become more like God and more like Christ and together, even this ragtag bunch of guys who are smoking cigars and drinking
Yeah.
and talking about God stuff are actually becoming more like him, more like Jesus? That was our
I think a
goal.
perfect example is even 2 months ago when Joseph locked his keys in the car, and it's it's 11:30 at night. There's an alarm going off in your neighborhood. It's pouring rain, and
Yeah,
three
it was
dudes-
like every bad thing going on.
yeah. I mean, and these guys are hanging out, going, "We're not going home till you get to go home." And so
Half
there's
hour out there just with a hanger.
Yeah.
2 hangers. They eventually got it. It was a miracle too. I watched for the first half hour and I finally was like, I good luck.
Yes. Okay, so like you said, just to set up a little bit of background, the kind of format that we take, and if you're interested in starting something like this, we're happy to help you, think through that a bit more. But we always put something out on Facebook, so it's not a random like, hey, by the way, tonight we're doing this.
Yep.
It's 3-4 months out scheduled. Get it on your calendar.
There's a lot more people who get invited than actually show.
Yeah.
And we don't stress that. Make
Nope.
it if you can. Obviously, there's the regulars.
Yeah.
They
Every
diehards. They
Which is
know we're
great.
never almost missed. But then there's a whole contingency of guys that we see them every other time or every third time.
Yep.
And that's fine. I want to let people know, like when you're doing these kind of things, don't get sucked in by that whole church consumerism thing,
Yeah.
where it's like it's all about attendance. This
Yep.
was successful based on how many guys showed. Some of our deepest, best talks is when there's been only 5 or 6 of us,
Yeah.
and we are able to really go down deep into
Exactly.
our own experiences of it and how this theology reflects on my own understanding and behaviors. And
Well, I think the format of hospitality is important too. Like, I mean, we spend a decent 30, 45 minutes when people are showing up where it's not like, hey, come in, grab your Bible, sit down, we're going to go. It's
catching up. How's the kids?
Yeah,
What's going on at work?
what's new. Oh, that's
Did
cool.
you get that remodeling done?
Yeah, there's like
how's your
there's
car?
community. And then also the format of throughout the night, while we do have a format of the questions we walk through, it's not a classroom setting. I mean, people are sitting down, they can get up at will, go to the bathroom, grab a drink, grab a
A
refill.
lot of
some food.
laughter. Holy
Yeah,
moly.
it's so much fun.
Sometimes too much, I think.
Sometimes you have to snap us back to the
Yeah.
topic because
Like,
we go
har,
there.
har. But we are here to talk about,
Yeah. So maybe we could start with talking through kind of what a night like this looks like. We follow a pretty typical format of a question that is across
First
the board.
format, like you just said, though, is a little bit of food, a little
Yep.
catching up, a little sharing of stuff, both physically, drink, food, cigars, all that.
Yep.
And then usually I'll just call it together.
Hey, top up your drinks.
Yeah, we start
grab
around
us-
7:30, and then usually by 8 I try to say, hey, guys, grab a drink if you don't have one or whatever you want to do, and let's go ahead and go outside, and I want to get us rolling.
Yeah, and the reason we do, you even just referenced, the reason we start a little bit later, like 7:30, because we want the guys to be able to help get the kids down, help the wives clean up the dishes. So we're pretty systematic even in the times that we've chosen. So it's not like, hey, dad's gone, husband's gone.
Yeah, it's not a weeknight because people got to work.
Yeah.
School and homework situations, bathing and all that. Yep. So on a Saturday, we can do it a little later. Or Friday, usually one of those 2 nights. Yep. That's intentional. I don't think any of our wives or the guys are all ticked off about them being a part of it. In fact, it's birthed into a whole lot of other stuff, including them.
Yeah.
We'll talk about in some other issues, or episodes, I mean.
So you call us together, everyone tops up their drinks, grabs a cigar, we sit down.
So then it always starts exactly like this. And if guys are listening, I know some of our guys are listening in, but this will sound very familiar, but we always go, okay, so hey, thanks for being at Cigar and Theology. If you don't want a cigar, that's fine, whatever. But we are going to talk theology a little bit tonight. And so let me just define theology. Yep. Theology, the word God. Theology is the study of who is God and what he's like, what his character. And we don't want to just throw out proposition or like nice warm fuzzies about, God's like this, or God's love, or God's like a rock. He's powerful. Like, but what has he done to show us and prove that's true of him in Scripture, in our own lives in the past, and then usually magnified in it through the life and death and resurrection of his Son.
Yeah.
And then we look at that and we go like, okay, if God's that way in light of that topic, whatever topic we pick, then we're going to look at and what he's done to prove it. Like, what does that say about us? What's true of us? And then what does that lead to how we get to respond? How do we get to live our lives and make our choices in light of that topic? And so what we do is we frame theology around the same 4 questions that we use to teach and train gospel fluency, which is who's God, what's he done to prove it, what's true of us and our identity, authority, and privilege now, and how do we get to live, right? And our guys know that now. Yeah. Right? And I have to be the bumpers, you and I both, we have to kind of be the bumpers when we was like, well, like pick a topic and we're talking about, fatherhood. Okay, great. So like, what do we know about God and his character and fatherhood? And people are like, well, he's done this. Like, well, that's the second question. What's he done to prove it? And we know our hearts tend to want to go to like action before character. Yeah. Like we do to be, right? We talk about that on
all
the
the
show
time.
Before. Yeah. But by holding people to that sequence, there's also a safety in that. Like none of, and I've had guys go, man, that was some heavy lifting tonight, keeping us sort of on task and keeping us to the questions, but it nets so much. And I've been a part of so many things where it's just like you get together and it's like an opinion fest and it's kind of fun and okay, but it really feels like a waste of my time. Yeah. This always feels like life-changing and I wish, we did it way more often, kind of thing. And I think that's because of the structure. Now, side note here, I'm a little bit of an older brother than some of the other guys coming. Sure. I'm not an crazy old buck, but my level of gospel fluency and belief that God loves me and I'm accepted and I don't have to earn anything, it leaks down into the way that I can hold us to this because I'm not worried about like, oh, you just cut that guy off. It's like, well, I didn't do it rudely, but I am going to stick to the format.
We're going somewhere
for the greater sake of where we're going. And by letting people know that up front, that's important. When it happens, when I have to go like, awesome, but how does that answer that question? Mike, Todd, whoever, it's like, how does that answer that question? Oh, I don't know if it did. Let me go back. Hold on a second, Yeah. And
snap it back.
I think we love the accountability, but I think people learn to then trust the process. Like by asking these 4 questions and not letting it go too far afield, we're going to really get somewhere. Yeah. Now I want to say this too. Those 4 questions are key, but I always break the rules immediately then. Yep. Right? I always start out with a question that's not one of those 4 to kind of ground it in the everyday. Like we're already sitting on my deck, fireplace is going, right? We got good smokes, got whatever beverage of choice you got going. And I laid out the ground rules. And these are the 4 questions that we're going to follow. Who is God? What's he done to prove that? What's now true of us and our identity? How do we get to live? But I always go, then let me break the rules right away. Let me start out with a question and I ground it. I go, like, when in your life have you whatever?
One of the topics that comes to mind that I think was the best kind of was the topic of authority. We hit on that. And your question to start it off was, what is the one time in your life where you've had or thought you've had complete authority in one situation, and how did that work out for you? And and what I love is that we don't let anyone off the hook. Like everybody's going to contribute to that question. If they're quiet the rest of the night, they have to answer that first. I mean, we're kind of strategic. Like, hey, I haven't heard from you.
They're not shy about it.
Yeah,
so
no.
What are you thinking, Joe?
And so that question came back, and it was dark, man. I mean, we learned really quick that for the 15 of us, it didn't go well, which primed that pump. So now we're all on the same page.
So now what do we know about God and authority?
Yeah, we've all got skin in the game because we're in the conversation already. We've had to answer and lay our cards out a little bit. But then, okay, what do we know about God versus authority? And that was, I love that first question that primes the pump of the heart so that we can actually.
What are some of the other topics you remember us going through? 'Cause
We did one recently on privilege. We did one on refugee. We did one on. I mean, we've gone all over the board.
we did generosity.
Yeah, we've done scarcity.
Yeah.
Like the scarcity, the mindset.
We did
of
fate.
Yep.
Theology of fate.
Yeah. One of the ones that was hardest for me to swallow, but actually jacked me up a year later, I can't unthink it, is the different views of atonement, the atonement views.
Yeah.
We did that during Easter. And just
the theology of atonement.
Yeah. And so sometimes it's not always like, I mean, laying the cards out, we're not all sitting there with Bibles in our laps.
It might shock some people that we're doing arguably some of the deepest dive theology talks I've participated in my life.
Yeah.
And it's not that never we pull out a Bible, but generally we're asking people to think, and we're seeing that we're teaching that we're smarter together than any of us alone. And it's very easy to proof text. So if people just like gave verses, there's your answer. No, but what's his character?
Yeah.
What's he like? And what's that say about our identity? And all, see, those lines get drawn through conversation, not through just chapter and versing each other.
Yeah, there's a narrative to the theology that we're building, which is really
right.
beautiful. The other thing that I really like about Cigars and Theology, and you actually did this at a training recently I was with you at, is this concept of high invitation, low challenge, low invitation, high challenge, high invitation, high challenge, low invitation. I mean, there's these boxes.
Matrix of sorts, yeah.
And a lot of times in the church, we immediately like want to jump in bed with the person, right? It's super low invitation, high challenge. So right away, like, hey, first week here, we got to get you in a Bible study, got you new members, got to get you plugged in. And you're going like,
high challenge. It's like, whoa.
I just met you. I'm not getting in bed with you. Like, let's work up to that. And this is beautiful because it's super high invitation. You don't have to be here every week. You don't have to be here. Bring a friend, come.
Don't even knock. Just come on in, go in the freezer, get what you need. If you don't see it, ask. Well, it's yours.
Yeah, we're going to take care of it, yeah. So maybe we could talk a little bit about these different avenues and the purpose of why this works so well, being that it is open door to so many people on the front end.
Well, our goal in everything for us, Heath and I, but hopefully as the church, is to make disciples who make disciples. That's the mission. And so really, this is a discipleship event. This is a leadership development event, wherever people are at, right?
Yeah.
And the offline conversations that this then leads to and precedes and all that, those are all part and parcel to discipleship and disciple making. And disciple making, who do we look to for that? Who was the master of this? Jesus. And Jesus mastered invitation and challenge, this dynamic between the two, where he lived his life high invitation, come, follow me, be with me, like they just did life together. But then he appropriately would up the challenge in the types of questions he would ask, what he required. I'm sending you out, you got to try this, that didn't work, go do this. You know why that didn't work, And he mastered the toggling up of invitation and challenge, a little more invitation, a little more challenge. And we have purposely made Cigar and Theology very high invitation, and it's a low challenge. Meaning you can sit there in silence, but we're probably not going to let you. But it's a low challenge in the sense that there's nothing you have to do to prepare.
Yeah, not going to have homework afterwards.
You could, we've had atheists come and have deep conversations. There's no pre-qualified knowledge required because communally there's a lot of knowledge, right? We're pulling up a lot, and
which is great because we never give the topic out ahead of time, so everyone showing up is.
Yeah, and that's been
unprepared.
intentional
too.
We don't want somebody studying up and showing up like, like Bible Answer Man, like, boom, like he just blew everybody out. Like, well, I guess that's everything.
Yeah,
nothing left to talk about. Apparently. So we always, and we've even asked the guys, hey, do you want to know about what we're talking about before you come? Like, no, just lay it on my heart. Let's go. I just I want you to reveal like who is God and what He's like, and let's go there. And by providing high invitation, easy, step on, nothing required, and low challenge, people feel comfortable. They feel safe. And what they find is actually the challenge is toggling up in the 4 questions, because when it finally gets to what's true of you, there's a challenge in that. Because do I believe that's true of me?
Yep.
If God's that way and He did this in and through Christ, is that true of me? And then the 4th question, what do I do with that? How will I respond? How do I get to choose and live? That's where the challenge comes, not from like, you got to perform, you got to fill in the blanks properly, you got to use the right Christian language. We do these talks, and it's so non-seminary sounding.
Sure.
Right? And I think that's blown away some of the, our pastor friends that have shown up and do show up, and I'm grateful for it. But I think some of them are a little, like shocked that it doesn't sound, it's not, it's very not highbrow in its language. It's very common, purposefully in its language. Because if anything, I don't know if I've ever been accused of being a theologian per se, though clearly
You
we all
yeah.
are one.
Yeah.
But I've definitely been called a practical theologian.
Sure.
And I think that's a very high, compliment. Like,
Absolutely.
we're trying in Cigar and Theology to have practical theology where it sounds and tastes and it can be used and chewed upon and applied normally.
Yep.
So that when you talk about it with your son, your daughter, someone at work, your neighbor across the fence, your wife, it's all the same language. It's not like, well, what is superlapsarianism? What?
Yeah.
It's like,
We keep it low. Hey, one of the things that I thought of just in light of what you said at the beginning of this episode, and one thing that we found is that Cigars and Theology works really well in the Northwest for our lifestyle. Again, finding the freedom that we do, and some
worked well in New York.
Yeah, it worked well in New York. But if you're a 25-year-old who hates cigars and your wife's deathly allergic to cigar smoke, and you guys don't believe in having any alcohol in the house, you might not want to
probably don't want to do that.
Cigars and Theology.
Yeah.
So while it works for us, it might not be the case everywhere. How can we encourage people to understand their culture and know their culture well enough so that they can see what works best in their context and get started in that?
Yeah, I think what you're really getting at here, Heath, is that we often in the church sort of do church and do Bible study and do, I don't know, small group or do worship or whatever. We do it in ways that are pretty foreign to the rest of everyday life.
Sure. We
just do. Sometimes I'll joke and I'll say like, yeah, I invited my friend to church on Sunday, and they're like, I'm like, where we sit in rows in silence, pretty much staring at the back of each other's heads, take an occasional note while one guy talks, we do in the rest of our life.
Yeah,
never,
not a normal.
And so I think what we're talking about is like, do you understand your culture enough, and are you participating in the normal rhythms of life and culture, like Jesus did?
Yeah,
but bringing redemption and hope and light and gospel and who's God and what's he like and what's that mean for us into it. And so for us, because there is a bit of a cigar and coffee and sort of scotch tasting culture out here, it was a very normal way to get to the hearts of guys and make them feel comfortable. Though from the get-go, not everybody smokes and not everybody drinks, but they get it. They sort of get it intrinsically. Now, we said earlier on, if this is offensive to you or you believe it's actually sin, you got to go with your convictions on that. Okay, so we're not looking to make you stumble and say, well, you're not doing ministry unless you're firing up cigars and drink. No.
Sure.
But what is going on in your own culture that guys like to hang out with? Now, I will say this: we have women listening too, and after years of doing this, like we used to call it, Brothers of the Leaf, like I was saying earlier. The women started going like, hey, where's our version? Like, this sounds like too much fun we're missing on. So they started doing something called Sisters of the Vine.
Yeah.
And they get together and, have a glass of wine and talk mom stuff and talk basically the same stuff, kind of theology and life applied. And there you go. It's a perfect adaptation. The women didn't go like, well, I guess we're going to have to learn how to, smoke cigars and drink, Jameson or something,
Yeah. Kathleen, my wife, actually enjoyed the last Sisters of the Vine because your wife, Tina, who leads it, said, what I want you to do is bring something from your kitchen that's just been in the shelf forever that you're not going to use.
Yeah.
And we're going to create something.
Something.
Everyone's going to bring it, and we're going to make something that combines all of them. So it was using our gifting. And one thing, just before we end here, that I just
nothing like jujube pot pie with chocolate sprinkles and Twizzlers sticking out. That was amazing. No.
One of the things I just want to say is, and I think you would encourage this as well, is I wish somebody a long time ago would have pushed my convictions for me to actually follow the Spirit versus the denomination, what they were saying. And so that's super helpful. It's like, if you're just not doing something because that's what your denomination does, or you never really researched it yourself, consult the Spirit.
I know guys have done the exact same thing around a barbecue night, like, or a chili cook-off. They do a monthly chili cook-off, or one guy brings a chili and everybody like critiques the heck out of it, or they bring their hot sauces. Like, what is it that works in your culture?
In your setting,
you know what I mean? In your setting, but do it with rhythm, right? Do it predictable pattern, and I would encourage you to use those same 4 questions.
Absolutely.
And so we'll make sure those 4 questions are in the big 3. And I even have full-on training in how to use the 4 questions and get deep into gospel fluency and all that. I can make that available for people who are really interested in this, because a lot of people think, oh, it's easy to have friends over and have some cigars and, some drinks and all that. Yeah. But how do you lead that thing? And how do you drive those 4 questions without it being weird and getting, and personal opinion fest and all that? So we can even offer additional training.
Sure.
We're running a little long
time. Yeah. Let's get the big 3. You can get the big three by going to everydaydisciple.com/big3. And the big three are the 3 takeaways we'd love for you to leave with right now. Caesar, what would be the big 3 for this week?
Big 3 minimum takeaways. Okay.
Yep, minimum.
1, discipleship and leadership development should be normal and reproducible. Okay. Classes are great, but if you want people to know how to talk about and live out and apply the gospel in normal everyday life, try and do more of your discipleship and training and development stuff in normal settings that are familiar and reproducible and cost-effective and fun, because that's where they're going to have to live it out. They're not going to say, well, I'd love to talk to you about that, but let me drag you to Sunday school at 9 a.m. on Sunday. Like,
it's a beautiful day and we're sleeping. Yeah.
Okay. Second, the good news, the gospel, is just as good of news, and sometimes even better, experienced with a cold beverage and friends.
Yeah.
Okay?
You're right.
So don't think that God somehow looks down on your efforts of discipleship if they're not done in the church building or somehow formally with giant thick Bibles out on your lap and, lots of note taking. Okay? Yeah. Your old school board members may not believe that, but God does not look down at you. They might, but God does not. Jesus went into all the places and participated in the customs that his people did and loved and frequented, and you can too. It's okay. Yeah, it really is. In fact, I'm going to say it's the better way. Okay, and then third, sort of like, so what are you going to do with this? Give it a try. Host your own cigar and theology group. Okay, or try something else that makes sense in your context. But get started with some less conventional and more normal settings for training and equipping in the gospel. And by the way, kind of hinted at this earlier, but events like this with a little tweak of language so they're not as churchy and Christian-y in our posture can be great evangelistic opportunities to bring, just guys from the neighborhood together, around a campfire. We used to do it that way. And I couldn't believe where it would go every week. And half the guys had never ever stepped foot in church, but we weren't hiding who we were. We just changed the tone and the posture a bit, right?
I love that, man.
And again, I just want to remind everybody, we're doing Cigars and Theology live right here in the old Pacific Northwest at Team K Ranch at my house, coming up here in just a couple months. And I want to invite you to do that. I want you to join us for that. I know you got to get out here, you got to fly out here and all. We're going to make it real easy, very, very affordable to come on out, have a meal with us, have a little happy hour, go through the whole Cigars and Theology. Then we'll unpack everything we did over breakfast the next morning. Here's why we did what we did. Here's the whole process that, like I just described in the episode. And then I'm going to send you off with 12 months of that resource in my brand new upcoming book called Slow Burn, where I give you everything step by step so you can do that yourself, all the topics, questions, and all that. So just go ahead, check it out right now because there's only 30 spots. Go to everydaydisciple.com/theology. You can get all the information and register right away before this thing fills up. And I'm just guessing it will. Okay, come on out, stay, hang out, have some fun with us, learn how to do this type of discipleship. It's a great way to do this with men. But like I said at the top, anybody really could do this. And no cigars have to be used. But that's how we like to do it. We call it Cigars and Theology. Hey, I'm out of time. I got to let you go. I hope you'll join me again next week. We're going to continue to share everything we're learning about discipleship in everyday life and how it all weaves itself together, making the gospel good news for everything. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for joining us today. For more information on this show and to get loads of free discipleship resources, visit everydaydisciple.com. And remember, you really can live with the spiritual freedom and relational peace that Jesus promised every day.